Last time on Still Mormon.
And even Brian Hales, he was like, it's interesting because most doctrines, the more you study them, the more understanding you get from them. And he's like, polygamy is the opposite. The more you study about it, the more questions you have and the more confusing it is. Like,
I have a friend who actually literally told me that he preferred to keep his head in the sand because I asked him if he wanted to know some of these things. And it was the most honest thing I think anyone's ever said about how they feel about those things. Most people would come up with excuses and reasons why they don't want to hear whatever it is. And he was completely open that I just want to keep my head in the sand. Like, okay, I did that, but I did that subconsciously.
Coming up.
It's like, whoa, no one ever said that.
Yeah.
How can we have the Saints book? How can we have the Gospel Topic? All these things that we have that we've been taught about church history, and you leave that out? As I looked into the evidence for Joseph's polygamy, I was appalled. Brian lists Mary Herron as one of Joseph's wives. And he says, we have one piece of evidence that suggests that Mary was Joseph's wife. Okay, what's that? Mary Herron's son-in-law, Joseph Ellis Johnson, was facing church discipline for having impregnated a wife of Lorenzo Snow. Nice. And during that, it comes out that this guy was familiar with the first frigging between Joseph Smith and his mother-in-law and Johnson's mother-in-law, Mary Herron.
But it's worse than that, because in the testimony in 1850, this man, not Joseph Smith, but this man who's testifying, who got Lorenzo Snow's, one of his wives, pregnant, at the time he was living in Nauvoo, he was living with another man named Joseph. Not Joseph Smith.
This is Still Mormon. The show dedicated to unsettling Mormon history.
Yeah, but it's so much better. I don't know. I think you can just feel it. It makes so much sense of it to say, Joseph didn't do this.
Yeah.
The Book of Mormon is accurate when it says it's an abomination. Jacob 230 is not a loophole. Polygamy is bad. No wonder it leaves terrible misery in its wake. That's how Alma says you're supposed to be able to tell good from bad. He says, plant the seed. We're always told, plant the seed and then it'll bear good fruit and it'll be delicious. It's like, be careful because Alma talks about, you can plant a bad seed. And if you do, it's not delicious and it's not enlightening and you should cast it away. And everyone has experienced this with polygamy. Like you read it and you're like, oh, that sounds abominable. Like, are you serious? That goes against every sense of chastity that I've ever learned that we know of in all of Scripture. How could that be? He's like, hey, Karen, why don't you go into the next room over while me and Betty come in? It's like, are you crazy? That's horrible. That's just, it gives you a sick feeling and it's wrong in every way. You cannot think of another doctrine that's morally repugnant. You can't. There's nothing, like you might disagree with, an alcohol prohibition, like you name it, don't lie. I mean, all of them are like, oh, I could see the wisdom of that. This one's like, that offends my sense of morality. Yeah. That offends my sense of chastity. And so, how can I overcome that? Don't overcome it. That's how Alma said you could tell, is because it's not delicious and it's not enlightening. And even Brian Hales, I cannot find the clip, but he actually interviewed, he was like, it's interesting because most doctrines, the more you study them, the more understanding you get from them. And he's like, polygamy is the opposite. The more you study about it, the more questions you have and the more confusing it is. Like,
well, so what goes with that? The idea of planting the seed and seeing, if it's delicious or if it's not, and casting it out if it's not, kind of ties in. Well, and there's other scriptures that talk about judging the fruits. But one of the things as a member of the church that we, I don't want to say learn exactly. I don't know that I was taught this specifically, but there's this black and white thinking of it's all true or it's all false. And so you don't have a sense of, I'm going to throw out this seed because it's a bad seed. You go, it's all true or it's all false. So sometimes people find a bad seed and they throw everything out. And I mean, I feel like that because I was there, and that's how I felt before I started looking at church history. And one of the things I learned, and so let me rewind just a little bit. this goes back to 2018. I was talking to my brother, and at one point he asked me, what is the evidentiary basis of your testimony? And I understood what he meant.
He's Latter-day Saint too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he wanted to, it was sort of like asking for your testimony, but don't just tell me, like, I know this is true and I know that's true and I know.
Why?
It was, what's the basis of it? Like, what's your experience that tells you that this, what this is? So I told him basically what I told you earlier about my testimony in the MTC. And afterwards, thinking about my answer to him was, well, technically, I only got an answer from God about two things: that Christ was my Savior and that the Book of Mormon is true. I didn't get a testimony of anything else. And since that time, I wouldn't say that I've had any similar type spiritual experience. And I had this sort of awakening moment where I thought, well, if I study church history, then it can't destroy my testimony, because church history doesn't have anything to do with, whether Christ is my Savior or not. And the Book of Mormon being true, I know there's arguments, there's just as much rope there, that people can find reasons why it's true and reasons why it's not, enough that it's not good enough there's not enough proof. You have to decide which evidence you want to believe, I guess.
And
but
a testimony
in any case,
from God trumps everything.
Right.
The fact that you were told
I had that, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized I can learn about church history. And then almost immediately I realized I've been afraid of learning about church history my whole life. And it was a revelation to me that I didn't realize subconsciously I was afraid of church history. And all of a sudden I wasn't anymore, because I realized it's not all true, or doesn't have to all be true or all false. It can be partial.
Yes.
Which I've tried to make comments about this on Facebook from time to time. It's like, hey, what you're saying sounds like black and white thinking. Maybe consider that it's a little more nuanced than that. It never seems to stick.
Aren't the scriptures very nuanced? I think one of the things that really helped me growing up, I don't know if this was the case for you guys, but growing up, I got the impression from, gospel doctrine classes or Sunday school or seminary that we were fundamentally different from the ancient Israelites. Fundamentally. We have a different level of priesthood. We have a different level of everything, because we have whatever we want to call the fullness of the gospel. And therefore, the lessons of the Old Testament don't apply. The lessons of the scriptures, even the Book of Mormon, they don't apply. Those cycles of apostasy, they don't apply at all, because we're a people of destiny. We
cover the chosen.
We're the chosen. Yeah.
Interesting.
So were they.
Oh, interesting. And so being able to say, wow, is there a lesson? We're told right in the Doctrine and Covenants to liken in the Book of Mormon and in the Doctrine and Covenants that what I say to one, I say to all. Nephi says, I likened the scriptures to my people. Are there stories in there that I'm supposed to apply to myself? No. Nope. Nothing to see here, folks, right? So there's I think a great awakening that can happen personally by really doing what Nephi says, liken the scriptures to yourself. There was a whole, movie or video series that take these scriptures and liken them to yourselves, right? They build a whole business off of that. Do we liken the scriptures when those people struggled with the very same things? And was the gospel not true because they didn't abide by it, because they struggled with this, that, or the other, with pride, with wickedness, with adultery, with lying, with thieving, with embracing the culture around them, which involved child sacrifice and involved polygamy and whoredoms and abominations, the Book of Mormon, all of that stuff, right? Why do we think ourselves different, immune from those things? So, man, that resonates with me. And I just cut you off. Keep going, please.
Well, why do we think we're different? Because those people are other people.
They're
and
others.
We are us.
That's right.
We are special.
And we're enlightened.
We know more.
Right.
And
we have a combination of the fullness of the gospel and AI. And so,
so we don't even need to learn anything, and that's kind of part
we've
of it.
We've got apps on our phones.
We don't need to study the scriptures because we're already there, and I don't know. I've heard several times these references in like Elders Quorum, for example, where people, someone will be teaching a lesson or someone will make a comment and they'll make a comment, and I wish I could remember word for word what they said, but the comment is along the lines of, well, we're members of the church, so we're here, and it's this way of saying like, well,
we're fine.
We're all
We've
saved.
arrived.
Now, how can we help everyone
We're all going
else?
to the celestial kingdom because obviously we're here, and yet like they say these things that are contrary to the scriptures,
and contrary to the whole foundation that gives them that feeling and understanding, which is a conditional thing that happens in the temple. Everything within the temple is based on conditional language. If you are true and faithful, then it's an if-then statement, if-then proposition within the very framework of the thing that gives us the confidence. And yet the if-then statement just completely goes over our head. If you are true and faithful, then the day will come when you will be chosen and called up, right? And
we
anointed
literally
finally.
had a stake leader in a meeting say, well, we're all on the right track. So how can we help
the celestial kingdom?
How can we help others?
We've adopted
and it was so weird. It was
born
like,
again
whoa.
mentality, right? The born agains. I had this moment, and therefore now I'm saved.
Yeah, I guess.
And my works don't matter, even though they do. I mean, I'm going to draw near with my lips, but I'm going to not say that it's actually really important that I become a being who like the lectures on faith say, who is a saved man? Well, Christ is the prototype of the saved man. And who can be saved? Only a being like Christ. Wait, what? Joseph Smith said what? That only those people, those beings that are like Christ can be saved? Back the truck up, because that's a very different philosophy. And that says that we have to become something else that we are not now. How do we do that? That's the mystery. How do we do that? It's through Christ. It's through his grace. It's through his atonement. But it's not based on me and my abilities, but he will make me in that because he's the refiner of silver. He sits there and he puts you into the fire. But you have to be willing to get into that fire with him and go in that relationship with him. And it sucks. It's not easy. But he's the one that does transform us, but we must be transformed.
And humility requires us to ask ourselves, am I off track? Are we so proud that we think that we could never do anything wrong, that we couldn't become off track? Or, the Lord constantly corrected his people. Like as human beings, we do get off track and we have to be more humble.
But our culture has changed, right? And it's the idea of the participation trophy. And we don't want people to feel bad. We want to elevate people's self-esteem. And so we tell them basically flattering words and say, you're good enough and you're this and you're that. And it kind of kills off the humility. And it makes you feel like, okay, I'm good. I don't have to do anything. And yet what you were talking about, the prototype of the saved man, is from the Lectures on Faith.
That's right.
And it talks about a religion that doesn't
require the
sacrifice of all things. And, well, how can I sit in elders quorum, and I'm prosperous and well, and, I haven't sacrificed all things. And yet, there are people there that are like, yeah, we're all good. We're all going to the celestial kingdom. Why? Because we went to the temple, because I have a recommend. I'm saved. I'm good. I don't have to do anything else. Like that's totally contradictory to the Lectures on Faith. It's contradictory to scriptures. It's, the NC 76 describes what a person is like who's going to the celestial kingdom, what not just going
to the celestial
but
kingdom.
What that person is. Like that person has become something, right? And we're like, oh, I don't have to do anything because I'll worry about, salvation after this life, or, it'll all get worked out later. As long as I go to the temple and I'm sealed, I'm done. And like, I never felt that way. And so I feel this clash. I go to, well, let's say just elders quorum or Sunday school, and you hear a comment like that and go like, but haven't you read this scripture or that scripture? And I sit there and I just have scripture after scripture come to mind. I think, should I say anything now? I could sit there and interrupt throughout the entire lesson with counterexamples or at least questions. We were talking about love. They were teaching a lesson from conference, and the topic was, it was about how much God loves us. And I wanted to say, well, for example, it says in the Book of Mormon, the Lamanites hath he hated. What does that mean? And how does that square with the other things? And it's not like it's a contradiction necessarily, but it's an interesting verse to juxtapose with what they're talking about. And it feels like there's more nuance here, and we're not at all talking nuance.
And so afraid because we don't like that it says that. And so we rather just not
Let's
read
just
it.
Ignore it.
Yeah. Instead of just trying to parse it out and say, what does he mean by this? Does he mean hate the way we would mean hate? Or is there a difference? And anyway, I like what you said, Deborah, about just being humble, and ready to say, am I off track? I mean, that is essential. Like, is it I, Lord? Right? Is it I, Lord? Like, you have to say, am I mess up somewhere? And just not assume that you've got it all right. And we always are like, oh yeah, a Bible. We need no more Bible. Oh, those silly people that aren't members of our church rejecting the Book of Mormon, right? It's like, it's us. If you're unwilling to explore and to keep digging in to what claims to be doctrine, if you're not willing to look at it, then you're doing the same thing. I have enough. And his friend that he mentioned earlier that said he wanted to keep that literally said,
he said he wanted to keep his head in the sand.
And then he jokingly.
and it's okay. Like he if he watches this,
he
will appreciate it, I think, because it was the most honest thing I think anyone said related to something like this. But he followed up when he said, I just want to keep my head in the sand. He immediately followed it, basically quoting that verse in 2 Nephi. And he said, the truth, I have the truth, and I need no more truth. And he said it full well. He said, I know what I'm saying. I understand, but I'm not ready for it now.
It was like 20% joking, but 80% true.
No, but he was serious.
Yeah,
That's
but he knew
he
knew the irony.
A lot of people don't care, though. I didn't. I didn't care about church history. I was like, history is history. I'm in the church. I'm in the present church. There were things that happened. Of course, it was the beginning of the organization. Like
they hadn't figured things out yet.
People had problems. Joseph was all constantly on the run for his life. He had all these children. So many of his children died. Like, of course, there were mistakes made. Like, I don't really care. Like, that's how I felt. And so it's fine that people don't care. It's fine. But if you do care, let's also not be afraid to care about our church history and to face it, because what's true is true and what's false is false. And, that's okay. Let's just find out what is accurate, what maybe wasn't completely accurate,
You might be standing on a little bit of sand, and that's okay to have your world shaken enough that sand goes away, because what's under there is the rock of Christ. And you're going to land on that, and it's all right. If the sand shakes away, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be on solid ground once that's all gone and you realize what's true is part of him. I mean, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He is truth. I believe that's a title for him.
Yes.
And so that's what's important. Mm-hmm. And you can't say, well, I don't care, or I just have a simple testimony. I don't need to know all this. You do, though.
Eventually you do, because you're going to be tested on some level.
And your desire for truth is a reflection of your desire for Christ. And so at some point that's going to come more and more to the surface for you as you see things that don't match.
So I have a question for the two of you. So once you came to this understanding, this belief that you hold that Joseph was not a polygamist, and that polygamy started with Brigham Young's tenure,
I wouldn't even say it started with him. I don't even go there. I just know what Joseph taught.
Okay.
And I believe him.
Okay.
And so, but continue.
So tell me, what did that impact your testimony of the church? Make you want to leave the church? Like, how did you reconcile that? And
well, let's talk about, so we didn't talk about that.
Well, we can start back.
He had this.
My brother asked this question. Mm-hmm. It made me think.
But how long ago is this?
It's 2018.
Okay.
2018.
And I started to study church history.
Okay.
And he'd given me some books, and I started reading those. And at some point, I sort of woke up to this realization, like, oh, church leaders are men. They're not gods. And they make mistakes, and that's okay. and they deal with regular life like all of us do. And so I'd been reading through that, and then I don't know if, maybe I could say the Spirit led me to this, but very quickly there were two really fundamental questions. I started to see like, oh, okay, all the different things that were happening throughout church history led me back. I kept going further and further back until I finally got to Joseph and what was happening. And I looked at it and said, okay, polygamy is at the crux of this. And so I sort of thought, okay, I need to understand if polygamy was of God or not. And if not, there's a follow-up question, which is who started it, Joseph or Brigham? And so I basically bought all the polygamy books that I could find. I got Brian Hale's books and a couple of others. Started reading that, and that was actually really interesting. And then, of course, my Amazon suggestions started, kicking in, right? Because, oh, you're buying these things you might be interested in. And I get pointed to Whitney Horning's book. And I get that. I start reading it and go, oh, I never knew Joseph fought against polygamy. You get the Price's book too, and start looking at these things. And then I realize, I'm headed down this path. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I don't want to surprise Karen later. So we got to have a conversation. So this is when we sat down and talked about this.
Kind of. We have totally different recollections of this.
And what year is this again? This is
like 2019, probably, or 20.
20.
So you're about a year into your search.
This could be, actually, it's probably more like 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. But he's kind of like gingerly presenting this. I'm like, what are you trying to say? Like, it was just really off-putting. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And so my recollection is just, it didn't go well. I didn't even know what his point was. But what helped was I saw, so probably because of his searches, we still don't know, but Rob Fotheringham's video that has helped so many people. Bless that guy.
The first LDS, the first polygamist.
It's called,
Joseph
who was the first LDS polygamist, Brigham or Joseph?
That's right.
Something really close to that. And so this pops up, and I was like, what? Like, my recollection is I had never heard that, because you were introducing it in just a different way. But that question, I was like, I've never heard that questioned, because obviously we have the DNC. So obviously Joseph, case closed, right?
Yeah, this is stupid. Why are you researching this?
No one told me that. So I watched this thing, and it's like, he's got all the receipts. No one ever had mentioned, oh, by the way, the first time the Saints heard what is now known as DNC 132 was 8 years after Joseph died in Utah in 1852. Didn't ever hear that before. That's kind of handy information.
So you tell me that 132 wasn't in the edition of the Book of the Commandments, the Doctrine and Covenants, that Joseph published shortly before he was killed.
Correct. Two of them.
Which section was included on marriage?
So in the 1835, 1835 Doctrine and Covenants, not just the Book of Commandments, but the actual Doctrine and Covenants, 1835 version. No one ever told me that had an article on marriage that was addressing the rumors of polygamy going on in the church at the time. And it says, inasmuch as this church of Christ has been reproached with the crime of fornication and polygamy, we declare that we believe that one man shall have one wife and one woman, but one husband, except in case of death, and then they can remarry. It was like, really?
And tell us again, which section was this?
It was section 101.
The original section 101.
Yep.
And then the next version, the next edition, which Joseph had been helping to compile right before his death, that was the 1844 version, and it's section 109 in there. Still the same thing. So that was in there until 1876.
So he made sure to republish it with that section, that law on marriage, it was called. And he did not include section 132.
No. That wasn't in the DNC until 1876. And it's like, whoa, no one ever said that.
Yeah.
How can we have the Saints book? How can we have the gospel topic? All these things that we have that we've been taught about church history, and you leave that out. that the first
and today
DNC,
they tried to characterize that Joseph didn't have a hand
it's crazy.
in that article on marriage by saying it was all Oliver's invention, even though Joseph organized a conference at which it was read, even though Joseph published it twice in the Book of Mormon, twice in the Times and Seasons, and allowed it to be published in the Millennial Star. So, no, but it didn't have anything to do with Joseph.
No, it's over and over. So, I mean, people can say whatever, but you just got to look at the documents. That's why I did my movie and turned it into a book too. So that's, I mean, we're kind of all over the place here. But
I want to make sure we cover that.
Yeah, that's that's what happened. Is I watched this, and it was like he had all the receipts, and people have heard me before. I've heard this story too, because Rob, to my recollection, he didn't have links in the description box where you could go to these documents. Yeah. And I was like, these cannot be legit, because I've never heard this.
Yeah, it's so audacious, right? Like, what are you talking about?
What he did have was screenshots of these documents, and you could see the little URL, that complicated FQDZ. So I'm squinting at the screen, typing those stupid letters in to my computer, and it pops up, and it's like, from the Joseph Smith papers and other totally reputable sources. And I'm like, these are legit. These are totally legit documents. Joseph really said this that I've never heard. And, it was just like, whoop. So cartwheels, fireworks. We are done with that dumb, stupid thing that is a total anomaly in all our doctrine, that is so offensive in every way. But we just go, well, it's in the DNC. No. And so I was like, so psyched. I'm like, everybody's going to be so happy to hear this.
Yeah. So it fell into place pretty quickly for you.
Oh, yeah. In 2 hours. I mean, I was done. My paradigm was changed in 2 hours.
It took me longer because I was reading these books, and I'll say it was an interesting learning experience for regarding prayer, because as I came up with this question, like, is polygamy really of God or not? I started praying about it, and one of the things, I kind of realized is, I've had a couple of answers to prayers. Usually they're in kind of this extremity, like you ask for something and God is very gracious and patient and gives you what you're asking for. But like normal answers to prayers, I didn't feel like I really knew. Like I realized at some point, when I pray, I don't know how to get answers. And so one of the things was just experimenting. And part of the learning process included asking about polygamy. I prayed about it. I feel like I prayed about it for months. Is polygamy really of God? Do you really command this? And what happened, and I realized kind of in retrospect, is that information kept flowing to me from different sources. And I kept learning and learning and learning. And it was like, God knows all this information's out there, and he helps you to find it and consume it, and pretty soon I had kind of an intellectual understanding that polygamy is wrong. And the more I learned and the more I prayed, the more evidences he gave me. And there was actually a person, I won't say who it was, but there was a person that I was emailing who this person believed that polygamy was of God. And I was basically arguing it with him. And I had a lot of respect for this person. And so I was kind of on this fence, like, well, I have to be humble, right? Going back to that.
Yeah.
Like I have to be able to accept that maybe I'm wrong. And so I kept telling myself, okay, what if I'm wrong and this person who I very much respect is right? And I'm, I've got to be willing to reverse my position, which is hard to do.
It's good to have that mindset.
And I kept praying, like, okay, if this guy is right and I'm wrong, you need to help me understand it. And God, over and over again, over the space of a couple of months, kept giving me more evidence that it was wrong. And it was really generous of him, because I already felt like I knew it. And yet I was second guessing myself over and over. And he kept giving me more witnesses that it was wrong. And, at some point it kind of becomes undeniable. Like, okay,
So what would you say to the person who's had the opposite experience and they've prayed about polygamy and they know that it's a doctrine of God?
I mean, if you're willing to change your mind, if you're willing, like only you know that. But I've heard tons of people say, well, no, that can't be, because what would that mean for all those prophets afterwards?
So this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about.
Yeah, and it's like,
is how do you reconcile the everything that comes after that, because it's very possible that that's one of the reasons why this is so hard for people to accept.
I think it's the
because
reason.
They're like, well, then now I can't. What do I do about the church today?
It goes back.
Well, can both things be true?
So that's, to me, it's such a non sequitur. I just don't understand why it's so combined like that for them. But I see that it is. And
No,
I have
I've
to
been through that. So I feel like I know it.
I know.
Right?
But here's my thing. If you say, well, I can't accept that because of what it means, then you've already admitted that you're not open, right? You're not willing to say, is it I, Lord? You're not. So that's fine, but you need to work through that till you get to a point, and don't be scared, because God will not lead you astray ever. He doesn't. So if you're saying, God, I really want to understand this. If Joseph didn't do this, I'm so disturbed at what that means. So help me understand that stuff, right? But I'm open. If he didn't do this, please help me to accept that and then deal with the repercussions.
Yeah.
He will totally be right at your side. Right at your side doing that.
Yeah.
And here's the scriptures just will pour into your mind, because Jesus never said, like, everybody's like, well, what would that mean for the church today, this line of things? I'm like, where is the domino theory? This domino, I get if the Book of Mormon is the word of God, and many of us have had that witness that it is, that shows Joseph was a prophet, because that's his fruit. That one makes sense to me. Well, then that means Brigham and John Taylor was third, we know, and Wilford Woodruff or Wendell Snow. It's like, where is this domino thing in the scriptures? Nowhere. Christ gave you the way to tell a true prophet. And he didn't say, ye shall know them by their unbroken line of authority. Like, he never said that. That would be so much easier.
So for you, that's helped you reconcile the transition between Joseph Smith and Brigham Young.
I don't have
the way that Brigham Young ran the church with polygamy.
Yeah, I don't. People like this whole prophets can make mistakes. Well, no kidding. So accept that and apply it to this too. Why, if Joseph didn't teach this and Brigham did, and it's not just that Brigham taught it, you guys, because then it could be like, well, maybe he got a revelation that he should do that. Well, maybe so. Except he said that Joseph did. He said in uncertain terms that Joseph did. 132 says, behold, I say unto you my servant Joseph Smith. So it purports to be from Joseph. So if it wasn't Joseph, then we have to look at this possibility that others after Joseph were not telling the truth about him. That is okay with me. It's totally okay with me, because I don't have a domino thing. I don't have to go, one part of it's wrong, so it all gets thrown out, or one part of it's right, so I guess it's all right. I don't have that. By their fruits ye shall know them. So if you want to know if Brigham Young or John Taylor or Wilford Woodruff, all the way to Russell Nelson and Dallin Oaks, if you want to know if they're prophets, study their lives, study their words, study their fruits. And that's the way that you'll be able to tell. So it's as simple as that for me. I know Joseph was a prophet because I've felt that. So those are the things that I know. And the rest, even someone can say something prophetic at one time and say something not prophetic at another time. They can make mistakes.
And Joseph said that about himself, right?
He said,
when I speak as a prophet.
And he would admit it, though. He was so fantastic, because he would admit when he'd make a mistake. And,
he beat a guy up in the street and then turned himself in. Like, the guy had a temper, and he did things that we would look at as really problematic at times, but he wasn't a thief.
He wasn't a liar.
He wasn't a liar, and he wasn't an adulterer, and he wasn't a murderer.
Right.
There's a certain level at which, one of the reasons why this conversation, I think, I'm loving this conversation, why this is so important. What kind of person does God utilize to transmit his word to his children? There's a notion today, well, God's prophets are not perfect. No kidding. But we also have so many examples of Alma the Younger saying, I was the vilest of all sinners, but the key word was.
Exactly.
Was. He repented.
Yep.
And he was born again. He was born, and he is one of the greatest of the examples. Paul, next to him, and Paul says, I am not worthy to be called these in the same sentence as these other witnesses of Christ, and yet I am.
Yeah, again, that humility of like I'm nothing. I'm just like, I'm nothing. I'm trying to follow Christ.
It's not that they couldn't have sinned. It's that would God keep them in the position to transmit his word and yet still be those things that go against the fundamental 10 commandments.
For sure. The story of Joseph Smith, we've all heard this, about how he had a tiff with Emma, and then he went out to try to translate and he couldn't and God was like, go until he made it right with Emma.
That's right.
And then he could translate again. Now, how in the world
did he get with Fanny and then continue leading the church?
Does that comport with he's breaking Emma's heart every day?
That's right.
She's so mad and they're butting heads.
How does that comport with Joseph Smith III, who would say, hey, we lived in a small house and
I would have heard them.
I would have heard them, and I was old enough to know. And I never heard a cross word is what he said.
Right.
So who are we going to trust in terms of what kind of man Joseph Smith was?
And for him, he loved Emma so much. That's the point of digging into this. It's not like, I don't need to know. You need to know because he loved her so much. And the letters are so clear about that. And then to have Brigham Young claimed that Joseph said that Emma was the wickedest woman and there was none more wicked than she on the earth.
That's right.
And that she tried to kill him.
She tried to kill him twice.
Tried to poison him twice.
Yeah.
Stop talking.
Like, who is this lady? She's like, she's like a whack job. You know what I mean?
Sure. And so it's okay you have to be okay with somebody's not telling the truth here.
That's right.
And it's the craziest thing because why would we want to assume that it was Joseph not telling the truth?
Yes.
He's the one that claims to have seen angels and God and
he
Jesus
restored
and
the church.
Translate
Maybe
the
he was the one who was telling the truth.
Yeah,
and
it's
his
amazing.
wife and his mother and his brother.
And for those who think it's only about confirmation bias, that we're looking for Joseph to be honest.
I would have done that many decades ago if it were that. I hated polygamy from the beginning.
It sounds like you guys didn't start with the proposition that Joseph must be honest. Therefore, I'm going to go confirm that. When you actually read what Joseph Smith wrote, when you read what is verifiable about him at the time, what he did, what he said, what others said about him, you cannot find anything in Joseph's words that you can track down to being a lie. What you have to do is triangulate to what other people said about him. And the question is what they said correct? And so you have to wrestle with that. You have to wrestle with the documentary evidence from him, from Emma, and from Hiram. And then you have to say, is John Bennett telling the truth about Joseph? Is Joseph Jackson telling about truth? Was William McClellan telling the truth? And were the other people later on who said things that Joseph said, right? Were they telling the truth? And then you got to do the hard work to say who's reliable and who's not. Let's talk about this, okay? Recently, on a program called Faith Matters, a number of LDS scholars put forward, I think, a really thoughtful series on various gospel topics, and one of them touches on polygamy.
Yeah, I spent like a week on that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you guys talk about what many of them, people like Patrick Mason, have said about Joseph Smith, and then how that contrasts with what you're saying and what we say and what some in our mindset say.
Yeah, I actually brought this up to my stake president, when he had a problem with what I'm... So I should explain that after I saw Rob's video and looked at it and verified it, checked it, it was legitimate. And boy, did that click. It clicked in every way. It made sense of that feeling that you have like, this polygamy thing just is such an outlier doctrinally. And so why is it? It's like, okay, it's not a thing. Boy, this makes so much more sense. So when I was seeing that people were, of course, they don't know these things. Of course, it's not in the Saints book that the original DNC said this and all these things. And Joseph gave sermon after sermon. Hiram gave sermon after sermon, say, don't believe people if they attribute polygamy to us. It's not true. We are not doing it. And so I compiled all that. We'll get to the Patrick Mason thing. So I compiled all that into a documentary to just show the documents.
And what's it called?
And it's called Woe Unto You Scribes, The Hidden History of Polygamy.
And where can they find it?
And you can see it on YouTube. Thank you. And it was...
The website is josephtoldthetruth.org.
Yeah. So you can see...
It's got links to the video.
We'll put that in the links below as well.
Especially if you don't have a YouTube, what do you call it? Ad blocker. You need to go watch it on Rumble because you can see it on Rumble without ads. So anyway, the point is, and you can get it in written form because I made this documentary so I could show all the documents that I felt were the punchiest, the most like, we should have been told these, you guys. And so then I turned it into a book form so that I could give it to the apostles so that they wouldn't, I knew there was zero chance that they would watch a movie from some rando.
You gave it.
Yeah, I gave it to all of them.
So can we just back up? Because I met you because you were like, hey, I want to come meet you and I want to give you my book about the documentary. And I was like, okay. Like, that's how you drove up to Logan. And, we welcomed you at our home and you were so bright and so excited. It was the good news. And you're like, I want everybody to know who Joseph Smith was. He didn't cheat on his wife. He didn't do these things. He never taught these things. And there's all these documents and they're all legitimate. They're like actual documents. They're like from the source. And I put it all together and I'm going to mail it to the prophet and I'm going to mail it to the 12 apostles and I'm going to like send them all this information. And you were so excited. You weren't like, I'm going to take the church down. You weren't like that. You're like, I want everybody to know. This is so incredible.
I legit thought, I do not know. I know that the church leaders get their history from the historians, not vice versa.
Yes.
Okay.
They are the
It's
scribes.
not the church leaders who are like hiding something.
Right.
They're depending on the historians to tell them the story.
Truth. They've outsourced it.
Yeah.
Which, okay, understandably, I guess, but something this big, I'm like, you really need to look into it yourself. So I sent this to him with the tiny hoe.
Tell the prophet.
I'm like,
I'm gonna mail them this and they're going to look at it.
Sea of credentialed historians saying one thing. I'm like, this rando, nuh-uh.
Yeah.
So it was like, they need to see
How far did you
this.
get? How far did you get?
I mean, I mailed it. So anyway, like their secretaries
penetrate.
Well, they would not let her show up at the building and hand deliver anything.
You can't do that.
At first,
it's not that they didn't let me. No one
they
can deliver anything.
She called and talked to one of the secretaries who said, oh, that's great. Come up here and, they'll call me and I'll come down and get it from you.
Yeah. So let me tell you. So I called them and I was like, what's the best way to do this? I'd like to give that to here's what I wanted to do, you guys. I wanted to hand it to each secretary.
Yeah.
Each probably female secretary.
Yeah.
Because they do read it
to her.
It goes through them first and then they pass along.
I wanted it to. I wanted to say, listen, sister so-and-so, you read this.
Yeah.
If you think it's valuable, pass it up to your boss.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do.
It does have to pass their test because there's some things that I've submitted humanitarian wise.
So I, to this day, don't know if any of them have ever seen the book, of any of the apostles have ever seen the book. For all I know, it was round filed before they ever saw it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what happened was one of the secretaries, like he's saying, she said, well, yeah, just bring it and I'll come down and meet you at the security desk. And she called me right back and she said, they won't let me. So she didn't even know that was a policy. And I had heard that.
Yeah.
So I was kind of excited, like, oh, is she going to do that? No, she called me back. They won't let me do that. So you cannot give
there are
them
a lot
anything.
of protocols.
They're so insulated. They're
so
insulated. So, okay. So anyway, she goes, just mail them and I'll make sure that it's distributed. So I mailed the copies to them. So that's that. Anyway, the point is that you're right. I was on fire. Like, I want people to know this because how can they know it?
Well, and you went through, I got to interrupt here. Sorry. You went through every single supposed wife of Joseph Smith. Every single one.
Yeah. To show you where he got it. Because it's so useful. Like I refer everyone to Brian Hales' website because he goes through each of the list that he thinks. All the historians disagree.
Yeah.
They have a different list because the information's so bad that they can't agree on a firm list of who were Joseph's wives. So we went on Brian Hales because the church leans on his research so heavily.
Yeah.
So I went through his 35
You're talking about
wives.
the anesthesiologist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Retired anesthesiologist. Anyway, it's okay. So he's not a historian, but he wrote a lot. Mm-hmm. And the church appreciated that Brian was able to make the point that Joseph didn't do any of this out of libido-driven reasons. So they appreciated that. So they really lean on his work, but it's like, he didn't do it at all, Brian. So anyway, I went through, because as I was doing my documentary, you guys, I figured it would be kind of even on both sides at that point. You know, there's this whole other side, and now people will have to decide. But as I looked into the evidence for Joseph's polygamy, I was appalled at the shabbiness of the evidence that was being relied on. I mean, so atrocious.
Yeah.
One of the most egregious is Brian lists Mary Herron as one of Joseph's wives. And he says, we have one piece of evidence that suggests that Mary was Joseph's wife. Okay, what's that? Mary Herron's son-in-law, Joseph Ellis Johnson, was facing church discipline for having impregnated a wife of Lorenzo Snow. Nice. And during that, it comes out that this guy was familiar, I kid you not, familiar with the first frigging between Joseph Smith and his mother-in-law and Johnson's mother-in-law, Mary Herron.
But it's worse than that, because
that's pretty convincing to me.
No,
I mean, that's a wife right there.
It's worse than that.
That's a done deal right there.
Because in the testimony in 1850, Joseph, this he's
already passed away.
This man, not Joseph Smith, but this man who's testifying,
Joseph Ellis
who
Johnson.
got Lorenzo Snow's, one of his wives, pregnant. At the time he was living in Nauvoo, he was living with another man named Joseph.
Oh,
not Joseph Smith. And so who's he talking about? Is he talking about, did Brian tell you that? No, he did not. You see, folks, this is part of the problem. When you understand the full picture, you understand that the narrative upon which the story is constructed has fundamental issues that have to be reconciled. To call Mary Herron a wife based on a single testimony that is pulled out of context is what I have called in the past historical malpractice, because you don't tell the full story. And so if you do, then good folks like Karen and William and others who read this, they go, wait, what?
Yeah, and she's like, I noticed something.
I think this is kind of shoddy.
I want to share this with everyone, you know?
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was crazy. So anyway, that's just what I did not know that extra little bit.
Things.
But yeah, frigging.
The first frigging. As
the
though
first frigging. It sounds like frickin'. What is it?
It is what you think it is.
That's the F word back then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I actually asked a friend in England. I was like, listen, I need to know if this is as bad as the F word, because I think that used to be as bad as the F word in England. And I was like, one of the apostles is English. He's British. I don't want to fully offend him with the F word in this thing, you know? And he wrote back, he's like, no, it's not, you know, it's crass. So I just prefaced it with the rather crass claim that Joseph had been frigging this. Anyway, so it's so dumb. But that is the single piece of evidence that Mary Herron rests on. Mary didn't say anything. And of all those 35 wives, 17 of them never said anything. No
or
affidavit.
More, 17 or more, depending on the number. Could be as many as 30 wives that didn't say anything.
Right. But it's like not one of them ever said it. We don't have anything from them. It's all other people. Oh, yeah, I remember that Agnes Colbert, you know, it's like really. And so it was amazing. I was appalled. I did not expect to find this level of shoddy evidence. So that's why they're all treated in my book. Because like I want you to and
in your video.
Yeah, the book only goes to about half of them. It just got to be too tedious. I thought maybe it was a mistake. I should have maybe.
So let me jump in for a second and just say, because at some point we want to get back to the faith matters question. But I want to say when she first started down this path, so she was helping before this to edit Michelle Stone's videos. And there was a lot of good information in there, but it was like a 2-hour episode on a very small topic.
Nugget of.
And it was like, how can we take 1,000 hours of information like this and help people to be able to digest that? And it was kind of like, well, it's impossible. But Karen had done another video before that. And so it's like, this is doable. And so I don't know, I'd say you worked on it almost a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was about a year.
Consolidating information, trying to figure out what the right flow and, this leads into this leads into that. And anyway, she spent, I like to say she spent more time working on that than I did at my full-time job. I would leave, she's working on it. I'd come home, she's working on it. I'd go to sleep, she's working on it.
Wow.
And so she spent a long time putting that together, and eventually, and we knew at some point, we're talking about this, like, where this could go. And it took a little while to get there, but it got there. And it was something that we were both like, okay with.
Totally
because,
okay with.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Happen?
What do you mean we know where this could go?
Okay, so I'll give you the timeline. So I made this video, and then I turned it into a book so that I could give it to the general authorities. But then I got a lot of people going, I want the book. So now you can get it at cost. I just sell it at cost on the Lulu bookstore where you can self-publish.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on there. And so people could just order from there.
The book came second.
Yeah.
Because the video went up in 2024, I think.
It was
in October.
October 10th of 2024.
And then the book, I think you basically were trying to mail it to
January,
the general authorities in January of 25.
So I did all that, and it's like, of course I know what this is a risk, because it goes against whatever the church's official narrative.
The historical narrative.
A sliver of me really did. I was like, I hope that they will look at this and call the historians and go, explain this.
Yeah.
Please explain this. Why does this not match what's in the saints book, And why weren't we told this? But that's not what happened. So that January, there was a general authority that came to our stake to put in a new stake president. And so when he came, you can never talk to them and they won't let you hand stuff to them or anything like that. But I threw a couple copies of the book in my bag just in case.
Karen's still hoping. She's got to
I always do just in case. I carry stuff with me all the time. So it's like, so I go to stake conference, and for some strange reason, it just worked out that I was very close to the front. And then, it's Elder Carpenter. So Elder Carpenter was giving a lesson. And as he gave the lesson, at one point, he said, what do we learn about the character of Christ through the story of the woman taken in adultery? And I love that story because I think it was Michelle Stone that put a different spin on that, where when he says, go and sin no more, it's not just, we always portray it on now, I forgive you, but go and sin no more, this like finger wagging thing. And Michelle's like, no, she had seen his grace and his mercy at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And when he says, go and sin no more, it's because she's now empowered to go and sin no more.
I love
and
it's beautiful.
And I was like, I love that. So he asked that. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I have strong feelings about this question. And I like see my hand go up. I was like, I guess we're answering this question. So I answered it and I told him that. And he was like, I love that, So then as he was teaching, a couple of times he referred back to it. And he would say, and we know about Christ's grace. And he would point back to me. And the second time he did that, I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to come over to me afterwards and he's going to shake my hand and thank me for that comment. I'm going to be able to put this book in his hand. And that is exactly what happened. So I knew that God was behind this. So I never regretted doing that. But I put this in the hands of a general authority. So of course, there was no people are like, oh, I bet there were spies in your word. I was like, then they had the easiest job on the planet because I was very open. I was never in anyone's face.
Because you didn't think it was a bad thing.
It is
good
news.
You were like so excited.
It's 100%
about
good
this.
News. So that's what so I did that. And anyway, so months go by and months went by and I didn't hear anything from anyone. So I was like, okay, I guess we have a extra cool stake president and whatnot. And on the year anniversary of my movie, okay, it had been out exactly a year. And we went and had been invited to see the Helmut Hubner movie, Truth and Treason, where Helmut was, if anyone doesn't know that story, please go watch that. He was distributing pamphlets covertly, telling people, the reality of the Nazi regime to wake them up and realize how bad this was. And when the Nazis got a hold of him, they executed him. So I watched this on the anniversary of my movie. That was not by that was a message from God. Like, this kid gave up his life. He was tortured. You know, you're not going to back down for anything. I was like, got it. And
so you took that to heart for yourself.
It was very poignant. It was like, yeah, how dare I, you know, if it ever comes to it, like, try to protect my church membership or anything else, to trade truth away for anything else. It's not going to happen.
And wasn't he excommunicated as well?
Yeah,
he was part of the movie.
Yeah. And there's some question of whether it was legitimate, but he was reinstated later posthumously, so we know it was.
Okay.
Anyway, so the next day, you guys, was the first message I get from the stake president. Stake president wants to meet with you.
Next time on Still Mormon.
He said right off the bat, this has nothing to do with what's true and what's not true.
Meaning whether or not you get excommunicated has nothing to do with
the truthfulness of what I've put out. He said that multiple times.
What does it have to do with?
It has to do with whether it aligns with what the church narrative is on the gospel topics essays and in the handbook and in the saints book and things like that.
One of my favorite scriptures is D&C 93:1.
Me too.
And I feel like I don't always do a great job of trying to live according to that, but it's sort of a life goal or whatever you want to call it. I feel like we need to draw closer to God and fulfill that scripture and work to come into his presence.
That narrative that they were both wrong to do it, it wasn't commanded of God. And so how can we reconcile? Well, prophets aren't perfect. We can't have Joseph up on a pedestal. Is that a big pedestal for you to just not cheat on me behind my back? Like, that's not a pedestal, you guys. That's a pedestal you couldn't even stub your toe on.
Concludes part 2. You won't want to miss part 3, the powerful conclusion to our interview with William and Karen Hyatt. As always, please subscribe if you haven't, like and share this video, leave a comment, and please support the show. We can't do this without your help. The links are below. Huge thanks to all of you who have. Until next time, thanks for stopping by.